Good morning to you all. Wonderful to be here with you today. So actually someone that asked me a question a few months ago that she gets recurring dreams of when she, almost like as if she was a little girl going through, in the Second World War, the Holocaust, and running away from the Nazis, and the same dream, and a shtetl and a town, and she could visualize the buildings and the streets, and again and again. And then the fascinating thing was, she even knew the shtetl, the name of the place. The thing is, she never went there, she never saw it, never studied it, and she asked that she felt that this was her previous life, that she was killed in the Holocaust as a young girl, and then she came back. And she wanted to know, would Yiddishkeit say that is a possibility? Is that right? Or is she just like something wrong with her, or it's just something that's come to her from who knows where? And she says that she has this, it's recurring, and like she knows this girl. She knows, she feels it. She feels that was her. So I'll come back to that. But I just want to share a couple of ideas in regards to the journey of our lives, each and every one of us. So we believe that God created the world, and each individual has a particular role and mission to play. The Mishnah says that God created everything for a purpose, and nothing was created in vain. And what could be more important than a human life? So therefore, if we exist, if we are here, it must be that we have a reason. Otherwise, if we're here in vain, why would God create us? It's really important for all of us to truly think about this, because sometimes in life, we question our self-worth, we question whether I actually even make a difference to the world, and whether what I do is relevant. The reaction and the belief of Torah is, by your mere existence, being created by Hashem, God is making a statement that you are critical to the world. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here. And it's not only, I once was productive, I once was important, but now, maybe the kids have grown up, maybe my spouse is no longer here, maybe I lost my money, maybe I don't feel now that I'm relevant. But we believe that every day, every moment, if you are here, if any of us are here, it means that we need to be here as part of God's plan to the world. So now, we also believe that we are made up of a body and a soul, a guf and a neshama. So our body stays around, changes all the time, till we bless ad mea ve'esrim, till 120, and then our body is no longer here. But we believe, of course, that our soul stays and lives beyond our body. In fact, the whole principle of reward and punishment in our world is accepting the belief that we have a soul. Because we believe that a lot of the rewards that we do for the things that we do in this world, we get rewarded in the next world. And the punishments, if we don't do teshuvah, if we make wrong choices, also unfortunately we have to go through a process of cleansing in the next world. So very much part of our religion is that we believe in the soul. In fact, you cannot be an Orthodox believing Jew if you don't believe in the eternal power of your soul. So this is not just a good idea, this is fundamental in who we are as a people, as a nation, and as a Jew. So what is the soul? How does that actually work? How do we put our finger on it? We don't actually put our finger on our soul. And that's part of the challenge, that we can't actually hold on to our soul. But the way it works is that when God created Adam and Chava, the first human beings, He created them with a soul that is brought down in the Kabbalistic teachings. In that soul was included the souls of all of humanity that would ever live. And then, when Abraham Avinu and Sarah became the first Jews, in their souls, we are told, is incorporated every single Jewish soul who would ever live or convert to our religion. We also know that when it came to the Har Sinai, Mount Sinai, when God gave us the Torah, it says that every single soul who would ever live would be present at the giving of the Torah, spiritually. Physically, there were several million people who were alive at that time, but spiritually, every single soul was going to be there. And actually, going back to the point that I said before, that we are all critical for creation, we are all critical, our role in being born, in just being, never mind doing anything, just being, is critical for the success of God's plan in our world. And every soul needs to find its way to our world to do a job in order for, ultimately, for Mashiach to come. That's one of the reasons why there is such a great celebration when a baby is born. Sometimes I hear people say, what a difficult, dark world it is. What's the celebration that a baby is born? And we know that it was actually the parents of Moshe Rabbeinu. They were the first ones that said that. They decided not to have any more children because they said, what a terrible world we are living in. At that time, Paro was enslaving the Jewish people. It was a difficult time. It was a very troublesome time. So who wanted to bring children to the world? What's the joy of children if we are living in such a dark world? And when souls are in heaven, they're in a state of spiritual bliss close to Hashem. What's the answer to that? What's the answer to that? What's the answer to those that say, after the Holocaust, why should we start again? Look what we went through. Look at the absolute disaster that we experienced as a people. There's many answers to that, but one answer is that in order for our world to come to its completion, in order for Mashiach to come, all the souls that were originally in that soul of Abraham and Sarah have to actually come down here in order for the world to find its completion. Because if there's one soul that didn't, there's something lacking in our world. And that's one of the reasons why it's such a joy when a baby is born. Why are we joyous when a baby is born? We don't know what's going to be with the child. A good kid, not a good kid. Is he going to give us grey hairs? Is he not going to? Is she going to give us nachas or not? Doesn't matter. A Jewish child is born. Another soul came down. We are one step closer to Mashiach. Why? Because a soul came down to our world. And we need all the souls to come down to our world. That's also one of the reasons why among some circles we encourage having a lot of children. Why? Because if as a couple you can bring children to the world and you can bring the Mashiach quicker, the more souls you bring down, the more kids that you have, the quicker we will be able to complete our task and Mashiach could come. So, but each and every one of us have a particular mission that we have to fulfill. Now that mission has been set out for us before we were born. That mission is very individual. Therefore, the family you are born in, the parents that you have, the siblings that you have, the state, the country that you are born in, the circumstances of your family, which seem to be random, is not random at all. For my soul, I need to be... Why am I born religious and this one isn't born religious? And this one is born wealthy and this one is born poor and this one is born from this city and that country? There's a reason for it. The reason is it is directly associated and connected with my soul's mission. So I need to be born in a particular place with every detail in order that I will have now the opportunity to be the person that God wanted me to be and to go through the individual challenges that I need to go through in order to fulfill what God wants me to do. Together with that, we also believe that each and every one of us have the power to be who we need to be. Now, that doesn't mean I have the power to be you. Why was I born in this circumstance? Why can't I have what you have? Why do I have to be and have these unfortunate circumstances? The answer: because for my soul's mission, I need to go through what I am going through. If I would be born in a different family or under different circumstances, that wouldn't be my soul's mission. This is also something we need to think about. Not to be able to look at others and judge yourself based on the circumstances and situations of other people. It's about you and me and each and every one of us looking inwards to say, what are my unique challenges? And those challenges is what I need to be and what I need to go through to achieve my mission. Now, what is my mission? What am I here for? I have so many things I could do. I don't know what to do. How do I know if I'm fulfilling my mission? How do I even know what to focus on? If my soul has a mission and that's why I was born, but no one gave me a guide, handbook and said, this is your mission, follow this. Of course we have a Torah, but that's very broad, that's very general. It's not specific to me. And sometimes we actually question myself, have I made a wrong choice? Did I make a wrong career choice? Did I make a wrong spouse choice? Am I fulfilling my mission or not? Have I messed up? Have I not messed up? Do I know if I'm good in the eyes of God or I don't know if I'm good in the eyes of God? The answer to that is, so in the Kabbalistic teachings it tells us two things about knowing where you're at. The first thing is, what's easy for you and what's difficult for you. What do I mean? If I have a mission, and I'm going to bring this all back to reincarnation soon, but I need to give this introduction in order to get to the final points. So, if I have a certain challenge in my life, and I find a certain, let's give an example, a certain mitzvah that's very difficult for me. It's very tough for me. My friends don't struggle with it. They seem to breeze through this challenge, and I can't deal with it. I'll give just a very basic example. I'm finding it very difficult to keep Shabbos. My friends are, I just can't. Give me any other mitzvah, I'll do it. Shabbos I can't. And for someone else will say, Shabbos, that's amazing. Shabbos is beautiful. You rest for 24 hours, you have family time, you can daven, you can learn, you can relax. I find a challenge with kosher. Kosher is really difficult for me. Not to be able to walk into a store, not to be able to eat what I want. Another person will say kosher, that's a breeze. For me, it's like the forbidden relationships that are who I can be with, who I can't be with. That's like the most difficult thing of all. And everyone has their struggles. Everyone has their things that they find difficult. So what we are told, and this is that a person's difficulties is often in direct connection with your mission. So if I'm finding something really tough, it means it's important for me. It's important for my soul. And therefore the other side, the evil side, the dark side, is fighting me so that I shouldn't be able to fulfill that. And I have to really try hard to overcome. And by the way, that's why we should never judge other people. It's easy to look at someone else and say, could you believe that guy? Look what they did. This, they're rotten. Well, first of all, you may not have that inclination or those challenges that he or she has because it's not your challenge. It's their soul mission. So you can't say to them, I'm better than you. Why? Because your challenge, you're failing where I succeed. Because you know they can flip the coin and say, and where's your failures? That we don't share, right? That we don't talk about. That we try to keep to ourselves. And we sometimes try and come up with excuses to justify them as well. But the real thing is that how can you ever judge someone if their struggle is what their soul needs to go through, and that's not your struggle? So therefore, people say, oh, if I would only have money, I'd be giving this and this amount away, and I'd be doing this, and I'd be doing that. Easy to look at someone else and say what you would be doing if you would be them. First of all, you have no clue what you would be doing if you would be them. That's just first of all. And secondly, right? And the second thing is, I mean, I can get completely off the topic now and just share with you a short story, very, very short, just on this. It's nothing to do with reincarnation, but in the time of the Tsar, so there were two guys talking to each other in an inn. You know, they were drinking vodka, and they were talking about the mother country, right? The motherland. Their love for the motherland. Two poor peasants, they couldn't rub 5 cents together. And one of them was saying to the other, if I would only have a palace, I'd just give it to the Tsar. I would just give it. And the other one's saying, and if I would have a farm, I would give it, and back and forth. Then one of them turns to the other. Tell me, what about that chicken that you have? No, that's mine. That's mine. Easy to say, if I would. If I were a rich man. If I were a rich man. But what about the chicken? That's a different story. So this is the idea. So what we find difficult is often very much connected to what I need to do. And by the way, throughout history we had the same thing. As a nation, there were different generations that were challenged with different struggles of that generation. And then we look back in history and we say, how could those people struggle with things like that? It doesn't make any sense. I'll give you an example. In the Tanakh, it's filled in the times of the Nevi'im, in the times of the Jews serving idols, bowing down to trees, bowing down. It's like, are you serious? That's what you did? Bow down to trees? That was like the big thing? Who are you interested in bowing down to a tree? You want to bow down? If I'm going to do an Aver, it's not going to be to bow down to a tree. I'll have plenty of other lists of things that I'll do before I bow down to a tree. Right? And yet that was the big problem. It's called Avodah Zarah. And the answer is, that was their Yetzer Hara. That was their soul mission. They had to, so it became very difficult for them. But then, that generation was over, and that Yetzer Hara sort of left. And there's all stories about how it left and why. I'm not going to go into that. But just to say that that's how it goes. What's the challenge of our generation? I mean, you can think about it. We all know what the challenges are. Very different to challenges of when we were in the shtetl or when we were living together in Europe. It's a completely different world today for us. And because of that, it's different challenges for us. Okay. So, but the truth of the matter is that we don't really know. We don't really know what is that moment that we were created for. There's a moment for all of us, by the way. There is a moment for all of us. That critical moment, that critical decision that will shape whether we will fulfill our mission or whether we're just going to miss it. The truth is, I can live a whole lifetime and not actually know whether I missed it or not. What's the response, however? Don't worry. Just do the best you can. Do the best you can. It's not really relevant. Doesn't really matter. Do what you can. Make the best decisions that you can. Try and live the best life that you can. And hopefully, by the time we go upstairs at 120, God will give us a big tick and it's all good. It may not be, but we'll find out about it then and we'll deal with it. But we cannot know. There were only very few people, great tzaddikim, that actually were able to tell people what their particular soul mission was, and they would do that sometimes. But for the most part, most of us don't. We know our general mission, of course, to keep Torah and mitzvahs. That is obvious. But I'm talking about within that, your particular, what did God have in mind for you when everyone said Mazel Tov and you were born? What was the picture of the potential that you were meant to be? Now, we don't really know the answer to that. We don't. We can only put, as we say, put our best foot forward, and we're not meant to know the answer. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Just try the best that you can, all of us, to do what we can in the time that we have in this world. That's all. We are actually discouraged from trying to go deep into these things because we have no answer. We don't know. We will know when the time comes. But now, so what happens? So let me give you two scenarios. So we finish our life, and it's 120 years. Huh? 120? And GST. Okay, 132 years. 100, yeah. It's GST. Okay. So we finish our life, and we go up to heaven, and we all get judged. There's a what we call a Yom Adin. None of us will ever be able to avoid that judgment day. It's not a bad thing. It's just judgment day. It's just going to happen to all of us. So just a good tip. Chazal rabbis tell us, do tshuva before you die. Much better. Go up to heaven with clean white clothes, clean slate. So the rabbis actually tell us, the Gemara says, make sure, do whatever you want. Just make sure by the time the day of death comes, you have white clothes on. There's only one problem. We don't actually know when that day's going to happen. So therefore, the Chazal tell us, Kol Yomav b'tshuva. Do tshuva every day. If you do tshuva every day, you're good. That's just a tip from our rabbis. Be in a constant state of readiness, because we don't know when that moment happens, when we are going to meet our Creator. And we don't want to be caught unprepared, right? We want to be caught ready to stand in front of Hashem. So that day will happen for every single one of us. It's just a matter of time. So, and we should think about that when we think that we can get away with things, or we think that we'll do things that no one's going to know, or it doesn't really matter. We all get away with things to a point, but as they say, you can run, but you can't hide. We can't hide from Hashem. So, also something to think about. All right, so we get up to heaven, and now what? So here is where it starts to get interesting, and here was what will explain what's brought down in Kabbalah. Now there are different levels here. You can have a person that completely was off the mark, like completely. Totally did not achieve anywhere near what they were supposed to do. They just made all the wrong choices. You can have someone else that made mostly the right choices. Could have been actually an amazing person. 90% mark, but there's 10% missing. 95% mark, there's 5% missing. 20% mark, 80% missing. What happens next? So what we are told is that the neshama, the root of every soul, there can be sparks that come from the roots of every soul. And those sparks can actually create new souls. So from one soul, just like you have from parents, from a father and mother, you can have two people that can create 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 15 kids. right? You can have one soul, that's physically. Spiritually, you can also have one soul that has many sparks to it, sparks that create souls from that soul. So what happens is, if a person finishes their role in this world, and they've been 100%, so then the fullness of the soul, let's say they have to go through certain punishments or whatever, what we call Gehenna, but I'm not going to talk about that now, but let's say the cleanliness happens, then that soul goes to heaven. That's the idea of saying Kaddish for 11 months, to cleanse up the soul, to cleanse it up, because nobody's perfect. And then that soul can find its place in Gan Eden. But in order for a soul to find its place in Gan Eden, it needs to be complete. So what if the soul is not complete? So then a spark comes out of that soul, the incomplete sparks, that's what it's called, incomplete sparks, will come out and create a new soul. That's not the original soul, that is a spark from the original soul. And that spark will then come down as another person to be with the particular mission of fixing that which the previous soul didn't do. And God will have to find the circumstances, depending on what the person did or didn't do, to put him in a particular body and a circumstance to give him or her the opportunity to fulfill that mission. It's no point saying that that person is coming down to the world to fulfill their mission, but they can't fulfill the mission, because what they're missing out is not. So for example, I'll just give you an example. So a person was really good, but he or she weren't faithful, let's say, in their marriage. So that's pretty serious. So it's a pretty big flaw. So what will happen then is the soul will then come down and having a certain. So if that person remains and that person needs to fix that. So what's going to happen? So that person A needs to get married. There's no point that soul being a soul that doesn't get married and doesn't have the opportunity to fix it. So he or she has to be given the opportunity to be in that circumstance. And in that person's lifetime, there will be certain temptations and challenges similar to the one that the original soul had. And now it's an opportunity for the soul to fix that by making the right choices. Then that person can live a happy and good life till 120. Maybe that moment of challenge was all leading up to when he was 35 years old, and that's the moment. This is the meeting, this is the time, this is the circumstance. It was years and years coming to this point which God orchestrated this person to find himself or herself in a situation similar to what the previous soul experienced, and now's the moment. The person doesn't know that this is the critical moment of their life. How would they know? But God has put it all together. And the person either falls or doesn't fall. And God might allow a few opportunities for the same person to fix it. Twice in their lifetime, 3 times in their lifetime. And the person's challenging, and suddenly he or she is finding herself in a very difficult situation. And most people are living happily, or many people living happily, but they are struggling and struggling and struggling. And they can't understand what's going on with them. And why am I finding this so difficult? And why is this so? And that's because this is why we brought you back. And Hashem in His mercy will allow it to happen a few times, hopefully till you've made the right choice, but maybe you won't make the right choice. And then you'll live till 120, you'll have a beautiful life. It doesn't mean you die straight away. You can either succeed or fail in your mission and still live a very long life afterwards. Well, then that spark will go to heaven for all the good things that they did and go through a bit of a punishment and through a cleansing. But then from that soul, another spark will come. So now we've got 3 people from that one soul. And it could be 4 and it could be 5. In fact, what we are told is that our whole generation today are all reincarnated from when? From the generation of the desert. Why? What happened at the generation of the desert? The generation of the desert was Moshe Rabbeinu that wanted to bring the Jews into Israel, right? What happened? We sinned, right? We stuffed up. Moshe Rabbeinu was supposed to bring us to Eretz Yisrael. We didn't go. The whole generation died out. What happened to their souls? What happened to their souls? They obviously didn't fulfill their mission. They would have fulfilled their mission, would be with Mashiach now already, thousands of years ago. Moshe Rabbeinu would have been Mashiach, but he wasn't. So there's all these souls that were killed, that were died. Good people deserve a lot of reward, which they got, but there's something missing in their soul. And so we are told that the generation of Moshiach, which is like also we're supposed to go back to Eretz Yisrael, Mashiach is going to come soon, and we are supposed to now fix, because a similar circumstance, Moshe Rabbeinu taking the Jews into Eretz Yisrael, we about to greet Mashiach, also going back to Eretz Yisrael. So we have to not make the same mistakes. What was the main mistake of the Jews at that time? They didn't believe. They didn't believe in Moshe Rabbeinu. They didn't believe in Eretz Yisrael. They didn't believe that the promises that Moshe gave them was real. And they were scared and they were worried and they turned their back on Moshe Rabbeinu. So the challenge for many of us today, it's brought down in the Sforim, is to have that belief. Not to be able to say that, oh, look at the world we live in. There's no way Mashiach's going to come. How can Mashiach come to our world? How can we see the miracles of Hashem? How are we ever going to see a building of a third temple? How is this ever going to happen? Don't do that. This could be what our souls have been waiting for thousands of years, to have the opportunity to make up for the Jews at that time. By the way, it says that the women, B'schus noshim tzidkoniyos, it was in the merit of the Jewish women that were good, and the Jewish women of today are also here to inspire their husbands to stay on the straight, or inspire the world to stay on their straight and narrow, because it's the men that mainly get into trouble, not the women.
Rabbi, sorry, when you keep saying they say, the source of reincarnation is where?
No, it's brought down in Reb Chaim Vital. There's a Sefer Gilgulim. It's brought down in different places. I'm actually going to quote to you.
It's not a halachic ordinance. It's not something that...
It's not something that is brought down in Torah Shabichsav, but it's the rabbinic teachings and understandings and interpretations of those that understand the inner workings of the Torah. But I'll tell you what we can do. There's quite a few more points, because I see time is running out, and I would like to, and I'll be open to answer all questions at the end, but I do want to finish, because I think if we don't finish, we're going to be left in the air. But I'm happy to answer all the questions. Okay, so that, according to this idea, you can even have tzaddikim, righteous, great people, that also will come down again. Because, why? Because you could have great tzaddikim that achieved amazing things, but that still, perhaps could have either even achieved more, or didn't get the opportunity for whatever reason to be able to finish off, to do what they needed to finish off doing, and therefore their soul will have a spark that will come from them. Hariani Kaven Shivim Shona, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah came from Shmuel Hanavi. There are many examples of tzaddikim that were in this world and came down again for the generation. Sometimes a tzaddik has to come down not for their own lack of what they've achieved, because they were perfect, let's say, but let's say there were certain expectations of what they needed to bring and to the generation, and maybe the generation didn't accept or it didn't take on what the tzaddikim wanted to achieve, and therefore, in order for the tzaddik to fulfill that which the generation needs to do, the tzaddik needs to come down, or a spark of that soul needs to come down to be able to bring the people to their state of perfection, right? But these are, again, things that we don't really know, and it doesn't really matter, actually. It doesn't really matter. But as I said, all we need to try and do is to do the best we can. I'll give you an example. The birth of the Alter Rebbe, who was the first Chabad Rebbe, Shnei Zalman of Liadi, it's brought down in Sforim, and the Baal Shem Tov himself said it, that there was a big simcha when the Alter Rebbe was born, because he said there's a new soul from Atzilus that's being born. It was like a big simcha, a new soul that never came down. So the Alter Rebbe came with a whole new mission, the whole new soul, and that was unique. That was unique. So it's not something that... So most of us, if not all of us, are not new souls. New soul is a very special thing. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't make us any less special. It doesn't make us any less important. It doesn't make us any less anything. It just means that we have unique things to achieve based on previous existences of our father or mother souls. And we don't know what they are, but based on our circumstances we can imagine. There's quite a few stories that I would like to share, bringing out different aspects of this, which we are only shed light upon this by the tzaddikim who could see the souls, by the tzaddikim who could see beyond. There were certain tzaddikim that could see a person and say, this is your mission. And not only say this was your mission, this is your mission because this and this happened in your previous life, and this is what you need to fix. Now, don't try and do that, because we have no idea, but there were tzaddikim that did that. And they would actually, people would come to them, and they would actually tell them, if they saw fit, to explain to them why and what was going on in their life. And I'd like to share a few stories about that in the few minutes that we have left. Well, now, without going into a whole in great length, I'm just going to mention this in passing, that the idea of coming back down doesn't necessarily only mean that a soul would come back down as a person. I'll give you an example. Again, written. This is. I'll tell you in the Kispa Arizal. So the Arizal was a great Makubal, very much into the deeper dimensions of the world and of people and of everything around them. Now the story is brought down. It's actually happened a few times, where there were certain birds that came to the Arizal used to give a shir, and birds came. And the students wanted to kick the birds out. Oh, the birds out. I said, leave them. They're coming here to get fixed. The souls are coming here to get fixed, to hear some Torah. And it's known that the Mekubalim were able to elevate the souls, not only of people, but maybe of souls that maybe did certain things in their lifetime that they needed to fix by a spark coming out, even as an animal, or a bird, or whatever. For certain Averis, it's actually brought down. I don't want to go into that whole thing, but it also doesn't matter. But the point is that sometimes, for whatever it is, you could have a soul can find its completion or get fixed, and sometimes it's because of a punishment that the soul has to go through certain experiences, which would be very painful for it, as punishments for things that it may have done in the previous life, to need to experience back down in this world certain things. And tzaddikim were able to actually see and elevate and bless those things around them that we would have no clue what's going on, but someone with this spiritual vision could actually see what was happening, and a tzaddik that elevates the world and elevates humanity and elevates everything was able to do that as well. So what's it going to be for us after 120? We don't know. Where did we come from? We don't know. Does it matter for us? No, it doesn't. Should we spend too much time thinking about it? No. What we should do is do the best that we can in our world, as I said before, to be the best people that we can be, and to pray to Hashem to lead us in the right way, that when those moments come, and the big thing would be to actually look at every day as, maybe this is my moment. Maybe this is my moment. Maybe I need to overcome this particular challenge or this particular desire or temptation or problem, or because if I do that, maybe this is actually going to bring my soul to its complete state. And if I miss out, and if I fall, who knows what happens to me next? Maybe. I just want to conclude with, but also to say that, let's say even that we are down here as reincarnated souls, but the original mother or father soul is in heaven. They're in Gan Eden. They will have... So when there'll be Tchias HaMesim, resurrection of the dead, when Mashiach will come, and let's say a person has come down 5 times. Is it 1 person, 2 people, 3, 4, 5? What is it? The answer is it's 5 people. Yeah. Of course, because, as I said before, the soul, it's a spark that comes from that soul. So the soul, if a person, the soul will go to heaven, to Gan Eden, a spark of that soul that hasn't been completed will become a new person. But the original soul and will affect that soul and bring it to its completion. As I said, you can have many sparks to one soul. So there are many individual people along the way. So it's not like the generation of the desert, we are all the same people. We're not. We are sparks from the root souls of the, let's say, of the generation of the desert. They had their families and their people, and they are who they were, and they achieved what they achieved and didn't what they didn't, and a spark came from their souls and, let's say, created us. And we are our own individual people with our own challenges and hopefully when we fix ourselves, we fix all aspects of the soul. And that's going into a whole other aspect, because there are 5 levels to a soul. But I'm not going to go into that aspect of it now, but just to say that it's all different people. So all of us are individuals in our full own right. That will be rewarded, that will be elevated based on what we do. Nothing to do with what came before us and nothing to do with what comes after us. And we will find our place in heaven, and we will, each and every one of us, in Gan Eden. No matter even if a spark of our soul has to come back down again. By the way, it also says that the soul to be reincarnated, sometimes it's hundreds of years later, sometimes thousands of years later, sometimes immediately it comes down. Sometimes what happens is someone passes away and then there's a member of the family that's born within a week or within a month, and then there's a boy born or a girl born and the name is given, and it's like on the day of the Yortzeit or right after the Shiva. So we don't actually know what's going on, right? We can't know for certain. But we certainly could believe that if I'm given a name which is the same name and the person has recently passed away, and that I could maybe be a spark that is helping to elevate and fix that person who I'm named after. It actually says that whenever we name, that's why you're supposed to give good Jewish names. Because actually, and we are given Ruach HaKodesh, the parents have special divine inspiration when you give a Jewish name. Because what parents are actually doing, without even knowing what they're doing, is finding the life force of the soul by giving a particular name. And often without even knowing, when you give a name of someone that's passed away or a great tzaddik, you are connecting, you are linking the souls. Which is a big schus, it's a big privilege to do that. That's why it's so important to name after a parent or a loved one or a tzaddik or a rebbe, because you want to infuse sort of the energy of that soul, a spark of into this soul. And we do that by giving a good Jewish name, by giving, especially after the name of a loved one or a tzaddik. So what could be happening is that there could be sparks from that original person going in and giving energy, life energy, to the newborn. All right, I just want to conclude with 2 stories. Maybe 3 if we have time. I was told to finish at 5:02 and it's now 10:02, so we've got 5 minutes to go, but we'll get one or 2 stories in. So I hope I've clarified the ideas. I mean, it's a big topic to do in 1 hour, but just to give a basic idea of how this all works, I'll share a story of the Baal Shem Tov. Now, this is a very difficult story. This is a very, very, very tough story. And only a tzaddik, only a great person could actually make this link. As I said, for most of us, we just have no idea. So there was a couple that was barren, didn't have any kids. And they came to the Baal Shem Tov. The Baal Shem Tov was the founder of the Hasidic movement. And they asked him for a blessing for a child. Tzaddikim would give blessings and pray to God on behalf of the couple. Tzaddikim are close to Hashem. Hashem listens to the prayers of tzaddikim. And they used to come, this couple used to come every year, travel, ask the Baal Shem to pray for us for a blessing. And he never gave a blessing. And one year, the parents were crying in the study of the Baal Shem Tov, and they said, we're not leaving here until you give us a blessing for a child. Pray for us, bless us. So they say the Baal Shem Tov closed his eyes and he was thinking for a minute, and he blessed them with God should bless you with the baby boy. They were thrilled. Finally, they heard it from the Baal Shem Tov. They were so excited, and lo and behold, a year later they had a baby. And they were so thrilled, and they brought the baby to the Baal Shem Tov. Anyway, the baby was 2 or 3 years old. And they brought the baby to the Baal Shem Tov to bless. If I remember correctly, it was before his Opshernish. And the Baal Shem Tov, with the cutting of the hair, the Baal Shem Tov put his hands on this baby and blessed him. And the parents were thrilled. They had this little baby boy. Anyway, they come home. And a few weeks later, the baby gets very sick. And a short while afterwards, the baby died. So that was horrific. So the Baal Shem Tov, the family were grief-stricken, but from grief they actually became very angry. And they came traveling back to the Baal Shem Tov, and they said to the Baal Shem Tov, this isn't what we had in mind. We asked you for a blessing for a child. It wasn't that our child should die at the age of 3. And they were crying and screaming. And Baal Shem Tov responded, and he said like this: when you came to me a few years ago and you kept on asking me for blessings, I could see that you were never going to have a child. You weren't destined. Not every couple is destined for children, and you were not destined for children. But you were on my case. You were asking and asking and asking and asking. So let me tell you a story. Baal Shem Tov says to the couple, a couple of 100 years ago, there was a king in a particular country that was married, and they were childless. Non-Jewish king. And all they wanted was a child. They had everything, but they wanted a child. So one of the advisors said to the king, it's the Jews' fault, because if the Jews would pray for you to have a child, you would have a child. The Jews aren't praying for you. Okay, he made a decree in the country, if my wife doesn't give birth within a year, every Jew is out of this country. What do the Jews do? They pray. They pray. What do you mean? What happens within 12 months? The king has a baby boy. The king is very happy, and he blesses his people, and he blesses the Jewish people, and he gives them everything, and he realizes, very special. Okay. His baby is growing up. The king has one son. So what does he want to do? He wants to give him the best. He says, I'm going to give you an education. I'm going to get you a teacher. I'm going to teach you the best. You're going to become the smartest. I'm going to give you everything money can buy to get you the best education. So he finds a teacher. It's actually a priest that was going to teach and teach. The teacher said, no problem, to the king, I'll teach your son, but 2 hours every day I need my own time. I do my own thing, I lock my door, no one disturbs me, 2 hours a day. A deal? A deal, fine. So, he's teaching this kid, and he's learning, he's flying high, he's studying, he's getting older, he's in his teens, and this guy, this teacher is amazing. But of course, what does a teen want to know? What does a teen want to know? What's my teacher doing for 2 hours a day? What's he doing? Anyway, one day he gets in, they lock the door, and he unlocked it, found a way, this, that. Goes in, and what does he see? This guy, this teacher with a box here, something over his shoulders. So the kid jumps out. What are you doing? Teacher says, what are you doing here? Get out. He says, no, I'm not getting out. Tell me what you're doing. All right, he had no choice. He swore him to secrecy. He says, listen, I'm really Jewish. And this is my 2 hours a day. This is what I do. Teach me. He says, I can't teach you. You're the son of the king. Tell me about this. What are you wearing? What are you doing? Tell me about what does this mean to be Jewish. Drove him up a wall. Says, all right, I'll teach you. So he's privately started teaching him. No one knew. All of this the Baal Shem Tov is telling the parents. Then he says, after a couple of years of teaching, the kid decides, what does he decide? Becoming Jewish. The teacher says, you're becoming Jewish. It's going to be a disaster. You're supposed to be the king. You have everything. What are you going to do? You're going to become Jewish. You're going to, well, I'll have to run away. I'll have to go to a place. I'll start a new identity and I'll live my life. Don't do it. You don't have to. Be a good king. Treat the Jews nicely. You don't have to be Jewish. I want to be Jewish. You don't have to be Jewish. I want to be Jewish. I have to be Jewish. He runs away. The king doesn't know where his son is. Doesn't know anything what's going on. Meanwhile, this kid has run away. He's become Jewish. Doesn't tell anyone about his previous life. Lives a very simple life. Gets married, has a family. Now, after 120 years, this prince goes up to heaven. Now, heaven don't know what to do with this guy. How do you take a person who could have had everything in this world, everything, and he gives it up to become Jewish, and he lives a poor life, he doesn't have anything, he could have had everything and whatever he wanted, he gave everything up. They didn't know where to put him in heaven. They were going to put him next to Avraham Avinu. And at the last minute, there's an angel comes along and says, ha, 1 minute, 1 minute. You can't send this kid to heaven. When this kid was a little baby, for the first few years, didn't eat kosher. You want to send him to the highest place in heaven? You want to send him to a high place, no problem. You want to send the highest place, you want to... Kid didn't have kosher for the first few years. So they decided like this. They said, okay, in order to give this child the best of heaven, we're going to send him back down to a Jewish mother and father, just for the first few years, so that they can give kosher. And then, after those few years, the baby will die. And then it will find its ultimate place in heaven. Baal Shem Tov turned to the parents and said, you actually were never going to have children. But you asked me and you asked me. And I saw this soul was ready to come back down. So I figured, I'll give you a blessing, the soul, you'll have this. Know that you had a tremendous soul that you were the parents of. That now that soul is in the highest place in heaven. And with that, Baal Shem Tov brought a little bit of comfort to the parents. Now we could never say such a story, as I said. Do we know? Do we have any idea what people go through, why they go through, what's really going on in the heavenly worlds? We don't know. But this gives us a little bit of an insight, a little bit of an inkling, the way a tzaddik was able to see souls coming and going and needing to do what it needed to do to find its place and its perfection. And there are quite a few other stories that bring out the same idea, but in many different ways. So in conclusion, I would like to share and tell all of you that whether we've been here, and just going back to what I started with, that lady that asked me, was she born, was she living before? Who knows? Is it possible? Yes. Is it possible? Yes. Is it true? I don't know, maybe. Maybe. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. For us, reincarnation, we're here now. We all have a job to do. Our job is to do Torah and mitzvahs in the best way that we can. That's all. May Hashem help us that we all make the right choices, do the best that we can, put our best foot forward, and that when we please God very soon, we'll greet Moshiach, and he'll tell each and every one of us, well done,